Live from San Jose, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley, it's theCUBE. Covering Hadoop Summit 2016. Brought to you by Hortonworks. Now, here are your hosts, John Furrier and George Gilbert.
Okay, welcome back everyone. We are here live on day one of 3 days of wall-to-wall coverage, winding down day one. This is theCUBE SiliconANGLE's flagship program. We go out to the events and extract the signal from the noise. I'm John Furrier. My co-host, George Gilbert, Wikibon, big data analyst at SiliconANGLE Media. Next guest is Chuck Yarbrough, Senior Director, Solutions Marketing at Pentaho, a Hitachi Group company. Congratulations, the merger's complete.
Yeah.
You guys now part of the big mothership.
Almost a year ago, yep.
Talk about the changes, what's happening. Certainly the big data market hasn't slowed down. Donna was on last year, and she really impressed everybody with the mojo of Pentaho, obviously, and now the acquisition and putting the combination together. What's the update?
Yeah, you know, it's all good. Hitachi, a lot of people looked at it like, you know, that's an interesting move. The reality, it's all about the Internet of Things, right? And the industrial internet.
Yeah.
And you know, if you look at companies that do a lot in the industrial space, Hitachi is one of those. And and so they're doing some very interesting things. From a Pentaho perspective, we're still Pentaho. And that was the agreement from day one, was that we weren't going to change who we were. We're going to, you know.
And you have freedom too. They're not shackling you guys at all.
No,
you guys
we're
are
still
completely
Pentaho.
running. You were running hard before.
That's right.
And running hard now.
And the investment is behind us. In fact, we're continuing to grow our team, grow the numbers. Literally, I came from a new hire training here in Santa Clara, and a huge number of new people. So it's exciting time for Pentaho.
Chuck, I was really impressed with you guys. When we first interviewed them, we did your event. You guys were running hard, but the focus was on the value proposition, which now is obvious to everyone, right? Which was data's got to move fast, data's going to be built into applications, there are going to be unknown things that are going to come in, and data's got to be enabled to be successful, but you got to set it up.
Yep.
So you guys really made a nice business on that. So what's the next chapter for Pentaho? I mean, I'm oversimplifying. Maybe that's not the messaging, but for the most part, I mean.
No, so it's important to understand kind of where we came from, right? So we were open source BI, or at least that's the way we're positioned. The reality is, early on, our founders looked at what analytics was all about, you know, from a business intelligence perspective. And it was always started with a business or a data problem, right? So from an early point, it was do data integration and do it right to prepare data for the analytic process. And that's exactly what we do today. And in fact, Pentaho got kind of, you know, some of the analysts had a hard time figuring out where to put Pentaho.
Yeah.
Because, well, you do some data integration, you do some front-end analytics, you know, where do you fit? Well, the reality is we always had a vision that it was important to manage that entire data pipeline for an analytic purpose to then do something with it. So if you don't prepare the data to be used right, then, you know, you're not going to get what you need out.
So let's tie that together. So now the rage today is you have to be horizontally scalable for the data, but yet you got to be pre-packaged or focused with some domain expertise in the analytics area. So that's what everyone's talking about. So that kind of brings to the next question is, if you really don't fit into the special magic quadrant because they're siloed quadrants, you're fitting this way, what's the solution look like? Because you guys now are enabling that pipeline for analytics.
I'll tell you.
How do you sort that out?
The interesting thing is what we do enable are very high-scale, complex use cases that require that entire orchestration and management of data throughout what I call the analytic data pipeline, to properly conform that data, to, you know, do some of the ETL kinds of things we used to think about. In fact, we were talking about data warehousing, you know, earlier, right? So, you know, we would go to an operational data store, grab some data, you know, do some transformations and put it in the data warehouse, and then we'd analyze it. The reality is the data is coming too fast, too varied. It's not just operational data anymore. It's coming from all over the place, devices, and now blending that on the fly as it's moving and delivering that in a governed approach, that's the key, right? That's what we can do. So being able to do that and deliver that intelligence is the value. One of our big customers is FINRA, interesting, watchdog of the stock market who has huge data assets.
So I got to ask you the question. So this is the thing back in the day. So in big data land, George and I were basically talking about this earlier. When you have the whole set of industry players who are running around the industry, trying to figure out, open source is going to win the day. Open source, Hadoop is going to save the day. That was the good education for everyone with Hadoop. But Hadoop didn't go away. It morphed. Certainly Spark has taken a front seat and everything. But it's not just about open source anymore, and there's a variety of choices. So you're seeing kind of a trend, I was calling it the BYOT, bring your own tool to work. Tool as in tool to work on a product. Yeah. So there's a diversity of tools now available, and that's a good thing. You guys have an announcement called Filling the Data Lake. I want you to take a minute to explain that, because I think that speaks to why people jumped on Hadoop.
Yeah.
I got to grab the data. Why am I going to throw it away? I got compliance issues. I better keep it, or they'll throw it away only because they don't want to say they have it. But they store it, and they'll say, we'll figure it out later. So that then merged into why are we storing it? That became the data lake evolution. What are you guys doing specifically around filling the data lake?
So data lake is an interesting topic, and it's on a lot of the messaging out here. Friend of mine and founder of Pentaho, James Dixon, is the guy who kind of came up with that. He coined the term, right? So the data lake term has been around a while, but the problem, people think about data lake and they either take one side. They go, that's good, or that's bad. And the reason why they say it's bad, and I think it's because of the way we describe Hadoop. Hey, it's a great environment that you can just dump all your data in. And you know what? The easiest thing to do in Hadoop is dump your data in. But what happens is if you just dump it in, you're literally going to create a swamp because you're not thinking about managing that data. So our latest blueprint that we announced is filling the data lake. It's really taking that very simple topic of how do I get data in, but in a managed approach? How do I reduce the complexity that happens? So I've got a couple of customers in the financial services space, very large banks, that are dealing with not hundreds of data sources, they're dealing with thousands of data sources. And typically what would happen is, and George could take probably 15 different tools and take something as simple as a CSV file and push that into Hadoop. That's easy, right? You can do that lots of different ways. The problem is when that becomes 1,000 different sources, you have to typically create a process for each one of those, right? You have to know what the metadata is, you have to define that, and you have to build that transformation process or that load process. How do you do that when it's at scale, when you have 1,000, or in one case, 6,000?
Yeah, and flow too.
Yeah.
So diverse connections, but also flow.
And these data files don't tend to be the same, right? They're unique. They don't all have the metadata applied. So we have some technology inside Pentaho Data Integration, which we refer to as metadata injection. But think of it as making your transformation processes highly dynamic. So enabling you to inject metadata at any step along the path. So if something as simple as a CSV file doesn't have a header record, well, you got to figure out what that metadata is. And the normal way to do that is you build, whether it's in code or using an ETL type tool, you would configure it, you would build it and apply the metadata at the time you build it. Well, then you get 6,000 of those transformations, and that's the complexity, right? Yeah. What was simple, meaning loading data into the lake, that was simple, but when it becomes 6,000 of those, that's complex.
Yeah, it's like streams,
because something's going to go
all these
down.
Different streams coming into the lake, or whatever metaphor you want to use, will have it build its own process. In some cases, there'd be new data types that they don't have a process.
Yeah.
So do you guys have the ability to take any new flow coming in, new data type, and on the fly do that?
Yeah, and so what this blueprint does, reference architecture, and leveraging this concept of metadata injection and making these transformation processes dynamic, you can literally have as few as one transformation process. So somebody goes in, they think about how they build that whole ingest process, and be able to derive the metadata at the time of execution.
So what's the impact for customers? What's that mean? What's in it for the customer?
Bottom line is they can, when you have a large, high-scale number of files, you can build your ingest processes much, much quicker. Because literally, you could do it once and do it intelligently, and it can interrogate the data or use a template to inject the metadata at execution time, so that you're only doing it once, and support thousands of literal files coming in that are in different formats and
so this is a big
columns.
pain point takeaway.
It's a huge. It becomes.
How about getting data
painful.
out? How about getting data out? So data in, manage in. So I get it.
Yep.
You guys automate.
So that's what our blueprint. That's what we announced, is this concept of filling the data lake. We're helping you manage
that was announced today.
And the point there is manage what you're doing, right? Don't just dump data in, right? That's the wrong idea. That's what creates the lake. So, and I like to use, I've got a picture of a beautiful lake, right? Because that's the way I think of a data lake.
Yeah.
If I'm going to put time in to put data somewhere,
it's 4th of July. Lake Tahoe is beautiful this time of year.
Exactly.
Should be clean water.
I want that clean, pristine lake, where.
All right. So just to quote some.
To then get my governed analytics out.
I wrote a blog post in 2007 called Dirty Data, and this is around the Twitter data, which I was playing with at the time. So I just want to quote some research that you guys put out on your press release from Pentaho research. Big data projects require organizations to spend 46% of their time preparing the data, and 52% of the time checking the data quality and consistent. That's 98% of their time. Okay, I'm assuming it's not the same, but maybe some overlap there, but still, great amount of time.
Significant.
So data cleanliness is a key part of this.
Yep, and that's, again, part of our...
Not just the ingestion, I mean, our putting it in.
Well,
or
and
what do you call it? You don't call it injection.
That's really important. So in an ingest process, again, simple,
Inject or ingest?
So it's a little confusing. So we have technology called metadata injection. It's about dynamically
putting the right
metadata into a process.
Okay.
The filling the data lake is about the ingest.
The lake is ingesting the data. Got it. Okay, just want to make sure. Okay.
So having that in a controlled way, helps you to one, not get that swamp, and two, ensure that you're delivering on the governed data that you're promising your users, right? And so if you don't have the right data, and I think you'll also see some research from Forrester in there as well, the sheer number of data sources that are being blended together.
Does Wikibon everything in here? George, what's your take on this? You're not quoted in here. What's your take on this? The data lake.
Well, I was actually going to ask, which is, there's a spectrum from dump it all in, separate, essentially silos of data, to take 5 years to, design a schema for every last, eventuality. And then there's, somewhere along that spectrum. And I'm guessing, no one really wants to be on either end, but there are domains of data that can be clustered together.
Yeah.
And then you iterate, and add structure over time to the whole thing.
What we're seeing repeated amongst our customers, and really what drove us into creating a blueprint, the reference architecture, implementation guides, services offerings to support it, was really the idea of typically they want that raw data put into Hadoop, but and a lot of that is, again, simple stuff. Some of it's relational, some of it's coming from CSVs, some of it's other sources. But in the example of CSV, that data, to copy it, they want to preserve that raw source. Okay, great. But the challenge, and I think where you were going with that, is how do I use that data? If I'm going to use Hadoop effectively, I probably want to then take that data and format it in something different. A lot of our customers are saying, you know what, put it in the Yarbrough format, a format that really takes use of the cluster and makes it easier to do the downstream analytics on. And so this blueprint that we've released does exactly that. You can bring the raw file, or you can leave the raw file and just bring in the Yarbrough format. But it's about enabling, and simplifying the process to get that data in and convert it into something that's more usable. Yarbrough.
But even with the Yarbrough, format, it's nested data, so it's sort of like, hierarchical joins. And I'm sounding really techie, but you're not doing anything like the intergalactic data warehouse data modeling problem that caused so many data warehouses to fail.
No. The idea is to fill the lake, right?
Okay. Fill the lake with it's almost like not guppies, but trout.
Guppies.
I like fishing for trout a lot more than
guppies are the bait. No, guppies are the data and metadata injection.
Yeah.
That gets the trout to the lake.
Yeah. So yeah, it's it's
at
about
the molecule level.
Yeah, we're talking about
raw fish,
large at scale data movement and managing it, right? Ensuring that it's a process that can be simple.
Well, there's all kinds of lakes. I mean, the species, if you will, getting to the kind of the fish analogy is kind of funny, but it's interesting because the species of the data, whatever type of data, there's huge lakes, just trout and some little lakes, and then you got master lakes with currents and everything. So, so the lake size is not an issue, or is it?
Well, no, I think it comes down to, it always comes down to what the use case is, right? What are you actually trying to get out of it? If you're doing this just to
Are we talking about Lake Michigan here? Are we talking about, I mean, give me the order of magnitude of like the size of lakes we're talking about that you have experience with filling the
Well,
lake.
I mean, I can give you some ideas of some of our customers. FINRA, an application that runs around 7 petabytes in size. That's an extremely large data lake. But they're doing some unique things, looking at data, stock market data.
Yes. So it kind of depends, but it's not the size of the lake that matters. It really
no.
But you guys,
managing lake,
don't.
Ensuring that you don't turn it into a swamp is what matters.
Yeah,
right?
but for your limitations, you don't have any limitations on the lake size.
We don't.
You fill up whatever lake volume the customer wants.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so Chuck, final question for you. Explain what you're working on with Pentaho, your group, solutions group specifically, and why should someone want to work with you guys, and what do you guys work on so the folks watching could get a feel for some of the things that they might, if they're not already a customer, could be a customer. What should they know about you guys?
Well, great. It's a great time to be at Pentaho. My team focuses on solutions. We're talking about anything where the Pentaho platform can be leveraged with other things, services packages and things like the filling the data lake blueprint. We're doing some interesting things. We really look at what our customers are doing.
Yeah.
Where are they finding value? We've got a bunch of customers that
you engage with them. It's just a process. You guys have
absolutely.
Can you take us through what would that look like? Like just sit down?
So I'll tell you what. There's one that I've got my team working on around cyber security. Analytics around what's going on, on my servers. It's very interesting, and there's some connections with Hitachi there because Hitachi is an infrastructure provider. So there's some infrastructure analytics things that we're beginning to see more and more customers ask for. That is pretty exciting. There's really interesting things, and it's some areas that traditionally, from maybe a data warehousing perspective, we haven't always been involved in, and now we're getting, we're seeing the need and recognizing, how quickly we at Pentaho can add value.
If I'll give you the final word, what's the one thing that you'd want people to know about Pentaho that they may not know about?
Well, I think it's important to understand that we're about big data integration and simplifying your, everything you have to do to prepare data for analytics. And this is the important part, is that we can then help you do what you need to do with that data, whether that's do predictive analytics, drive that through an R process, so prepare data and do the analysis and deliver that, whether that comes back in a visualization.
And scale's not an issue.
And scale is what we do well.
All right, Chuck, thanks for spending the time to share.
Thanks, guys.
That's a serious injection of content here on theCUBE, metadata injection and ingestion for you. Thanks for watching theCUBE. We are bringing the live content to you here at Hadoop Summit 2016. I'm John Furrier, George Gilbert. We'll be right back with more right after this short break, day one coverage.